Hey everybody, Don Martelli, CEO of the PR Bunker, here with another exciting podcast episode. This one's a little near and dear to my heart because my special guest today is somebody who I've known for quite some time. And when I think about the nonprofit space and I think about communications, telling story, raising money, and moving missions forward, there's a handful of people in my world that I think about, and this particular talented gentleman is one of them. Rich Greif, nice to see you and nice to hear you today. Thank you for joining me on the PR Bunker podcast. So Rich, tell me about how we got here. Talk to me about your experience in the nonprofit space and tell me about what's going on at your current organization.
I've been, as you know, passionate about making life better for children and adults in need and telling the really impactful stories that mission-driven organizations do. I've worked for national, state, and local nonprofits like Big Brothers Big Sisters, Make-A-Wish, Mass Mentoring, Read to a Child, Tufts Health Plan, and others. I'm currently the Director of Communications and Development at the Guild for Human Services, and we help individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities achieve their full potential to lead high-quality lives and participate meaningfully in the community. We have a special education school based here in Concord, serving about 90 students, and we also have an adult program for adults 22 and older, and in total we serve about 175 youth and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
That's great. I think that the word impact is often used in the nonprofit space, but clearly this has been the genesis of your career for quite some time. Some really big organizations you've worked for and the impact you've made over the years. I think it's incredible stuff, and I'm pleased to have you join me on this journey today. And for those of you listening in, the topic today is around communications and how to tell a story to drive a mission. And this is legitimately right in the heart of Rich's experience to the point where we'll get to this later, you do a little teaching at the education level at Boston University, which we'll get to in a little bit. But love to explore this theme a little bit with me. And the first question I had for you is, what strategies have you found most effective in using PR to amplify and support a mission-driven cause and organization?
Yeah, so at the Guild, our focus as an organization is on increasing skills, for our students and residents to allow them the greatest degree of independence and community inclusion. So for us, it's really important to show examples of our mission in action, whether that's students volunteering at a local farm or food pantry. Some take classes at Middlesex Community College. Some might be gaining internship experience at a CVS, working at a market basket or a local cafe, or even just any of them out in the community enjoying concerts, sporting events, and theme parks, like all of us do. We really believe that a positive educational and living experience includes the development of independent living skills, social skills, vocational skills, academic skills. So that's why we really focus a lot on sharing those stories of positive engagement in the community.
What does that look like? Clearly, and to get people to support an organization like yours, it's, I guess, what's the terminology? Time, talent, and treasure, folks typically say. So in terms of telling that story, what does that look like? Is it traditional PR, marketing, video work? I mean, how do you fight the battle that is today's media landscape? And what does that storytelling, tactically look like?
Yeah, it's really all of it. I mean, it really starts with us building good relationships across our organization. We're a staff of over 500 people, because of the level of support that's required to support the people that we serve. So it's really trying to stay close to the different stories that we have going on, either out in the school or in the community, and working with our different internal and external partners, to try and capture that story and then find the best way to put that out there. Is that on some of our own channels? Does that make for a great local news story? But it really all starts with building the connections internally to help understand and learn what great stories are happening, and then figuring out the best way to get those out to the world.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that nonprofits have generally is that every story has importance, and every story pertains to the mission in some way, shape, or form. Maybe some are, Sunday Globe above the fold, some are more marketing content. I mean, how do you go through the journey, every day in your job, and you hear these different things, little anecdotes? I mean, how do you make that decision to say, look, this needs to be elevated, this needs to go, this is a broader broadcast opportunity, this is more marketing? How do you make that decision, and what kind of news judgment goes into that kind of, that strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at a variety of things. I mean, obviously, we look at the story itself, who's involved in the story, what are some of the unique elements of it from a staff perspective, from a student or adult resident perspective, from a parent family perspective, and really sort of how unique is the story. I mean, every story, like you mentioned, is really important, but we really try to take a look at, what are some of the unique elements and assets that also might be available? Is it something where a student or resident might be able to be on TV or a parent on TV, or is it better just to capture different photos and interview people? Some of it's the comfort level of the people that are involved. So we look at all those different elements and then try and determine really the best mediums for those stories.
It's a good way to put it, because I think that sometimes people forget that it's not just coming up with an idea and calling the Boston Globe and they're going to cover it that day, but thinking through individuals' level of comfort with cameras in their face, live TV, print recording, radio. So it's really good to kind of think through those elements. And love to have you give the audience here, a story or two that has stuck with you over your career that just reminds you of the impact you've made and the importance of, PR and storytelling to drive a mission. Any anecdotes or from this particular experience at the Guild or elsewhere you want to share?
Yeah, I certainly remember when I was at Make-A-Wish, we had a very unique wish for a child with a rare brain tumor. And, most kids, when they wish for something, wish for a Disney trip or a cool experience. But this particular child chose to give away his wish by wishing for an indoor play structure at his elementary school. And we worked with a local design company on the project and, gave an exclusive to a local TV station for the community unveiling of the project. And another thing that was really critical about that is, besides having the local TV station there, we made sure to capture our own photo and video footage and interview people so that we had additional assets, at the ready for us. And after the story aired, we amplified it, on our social channels and sent it to additional outlets. And because it's so rare, just 1% of kids ever donate their wish back for something. It became a big story that went viral across the country. It landed on the Today Show, Prevention Magazine, a whole bunch of other things. And what was nice, even though the child passed away sometime after that, we created a special Pay It Forward award in the child's memory and presented it to the family at the Make-A-Wish annual gala. And that year broke, significant fundraising records. So it was a great, really unique wish to be part of and videotape and share that story, but then to be able to use it to help advance our mission was really very rewarding.
Yeah, you must have gone through a lot of Kleenex in your years, because those stories are the ones that just grip you and grip the heart. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Now, what about obviously today's media landscape? As when you and I did work together years ago, and we were both much younger, the globe was about probably 6 to 7 inches thick on a Sunday, and these days it's probably thinner than a business card. With the dynamic of an impending election, what's going on in the world with conflict and war and religious issues. There's just so much stuff in the media. I mean, how do you stay to the course and stay towards the mission? And how do you kind of dip your toes into this current media landscape and amongst all these challenges? How do you navigate that? What does that kind of strategic, creative process look like for you internally?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, there's many human service agencies, in our field serving similar populations. So we've really turned a lot toward positioning ourselves using thought leadership in particular, often tied to very timely topics in the news or our field. So, for example, we've written opinion pieces about the emergency department boarding crisis happening in hospitals in Massachusetts, the housing crisis that's happened when people with individuals with disabilities turn 22, their required educational services end. We've written about the human services staffing crisis, the importance of specific things that are in the legislature, like increasing the hourly wage for direct service professionals, or connecting it even to stuff mainstream that's happening nationally, like looking at changes in sensory-friendly hours and retail spaces that are happening at companies like Walmart and Starbucks. So whether it's something local in Massachusetts or national, these are all things that matter to our sector and the families that we serve. And those are issues that are really relevant to our whole field.
I think what you described is pretty emblematic of folks that are in our position that are in marketing, communications, PR, it's not just about here's a story we want to tell, but how do we insert ourselves into a much larger narrative to get the attention we're seeking? So it's always this, part of the reason why I love what I do is the fact that you get to learn and you get to stay on top of things and be tapping into what's going on in society in some way, shape, or form, which I think is great. So those examples are fantastic. What's next for you at the Guild? I mean, obviously the work never ends in the nonprofit space, and there's always money to be raised, always mission to drive, and stories to tell. What's the roadmap look like for you guys in the next month, 3, 6, 12?
Yeah, we're definitely big into the event season for us. So both some of our own events, including board-led fundraising events. We have our annual sort of Guild Awards and Spring Dance. So there's lots of great events. There's also community-based events that we participate in or sponsor. There's a Profound Autism Summit going on that we're sponsoring, and a number of other events that we're sponsoring. We also, get involved in a lot of community-based activities. There's a Sudbury Commission on Disability event that we're sponsoring. So whether it's our own events or getting engaged in other community events or speaking at public events, which, as you can imagine, is a great avenue for us, getting engaged and being out in the community during the springtime is a huge opportunity.
Yeah. The work is never done, right? Never done. It's good stuff. Nope. And I teased this at the front end of the podcast. You do have a little bit of a side hustle. I would love for you to talk about your work at Boston University and how you mold tomorrow's young professional communications and marketing minds. How do you leverage that opportunity for your current position, your current profession? What fuels you to go back into the classroom?
Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. I get to teach the next generation of strategic, inclusive, and community-minded communicators through a writing for communications class, that I teach at BU. And really, by the time they've gotten to me, they've taken some writing classes, but we really focus on hands-on business communications writing, blogging, feature profiling, speech writing, media preparation, all the stuff that they might do, whether they may work in-house one day or at an agency. But really, we talk a lot about current situations in the news and things that are in the media. As you well know, there are lots of examples of companies that have done really wonderful communications and campaigns, and some that clearly miss the mark, even though they're well-resourced organizations. So we talk a lot about, those situations, and really to get them to think strategically, how would they approach those situations, thinking about the audiences that they're trying to communicate to, and how can they avoid some of the pitfalls that many of these companies, even ones that are well-resourced, fall into. So we look in real time together at many of these situations that don't have only one answer. And so it's very insightful, to hear and see what they think in terms of what's required for companies today, especially ones to reach, Gen Z like them.
Sure. Have you ever used the classroom as a bit of a mind hive for your day-to-day job?
Oh, sure. I mean, we talk about, work that goes on in my organization and related organizations all the time. And it's really, it's just as insightful for me. I learn just as much for them to hear their feedback on how they think about different audiences, different tools and techniques, that they're familiar with. Their world comes through such a different lens, both in terms of, their worldview as well as the tools that they're using. So it's really helpful and insightful for me to hear their perspective on some of the business challenges that we face.
Sure. I know that, like I said, at the front end, there's a handful of folks that I tap when it comes to the nonprofit space and moving missions forward through this integrated model. What do you love about the work that you do? Just generally about just the profession itself, nonprofit space. What drives you to get up every morning, grab that cup of coffee and go to work?
Yeah, it's really that, every day they're just inspiring stories to tell. Even though we serve a similar population, we serve 175 people with youth and adults with intellectual disabilities, but they all have their own unique story and journey and family history and path to how they got here. Even our staff are very diverse. They come from over 45 different countries. We've profiled and learned some of their immigration stories to this country. So really the chance to kind of go beyond what people think and know day to day, because everyone has different perceptions of the people that we serve. And so to really go underneath that and see some of the really heartwarming stories and get, underneath what's happening. We did a documentary about, what life was like at the Guild during COVID, which, as you can imagine, was challenging for everyone. But for our population, many were separated from their families for almost 3 months, which is such a huge
Yeah, it's
difference
incredible.
from, how many of us were. And yet you would think, well, that population, had a lot of challenges during that time. And of course it did, obviously being, out of their day-to-day routine and separated from their families. Yet there were wonderful, inspiring stories of some of the amazing things that they accomplished. We shared videos with parents seeing their children cooking, in the kitchen of the home that they live in and baking things. And the parents saying, I couldn't ever imagine my child being able to put something in an oven and cook it. And so there were really so many triumphs, during that time, that it wasn't all necessarily what you might think. It wasn't all bad. There was a lot of growth and independence and bonding that happened during that time. So the ability to kind of step back from what's happening on the surface and what we do every day and really, get underneath and understand more of what, motivates and inspires people, how they got involved, and their journey in particular with us is really what makes this world unique and inspires me every day.
It's good stuff, Rich. It's a stark reminder that there is still a very thick, healthy, motivated layer of goodness in this world. So it's good stuff. I'm sure you've it's at times found yourself taking that educative, your professorial role you have at BU into your roles, because I know for a fact I've had jobs on the client side where you're one of two or three people that sit in this marketing communication space. And that's just Rich. He does the advertising. Oh, that's Rich. He does the website. Oh, he's the guy that manages our social media. Talk to me a little bit about the work you do internally with organizations and educate them on how important it is to tell these stories. Because you're sort of you're the engine that makes these things move, but you'll still need the gasoline, right? You need people to give you content. So I'm sure that there's a process to which you've molded over the years to get in front of the right people, so they're just constantly thinking of you, whether it be marketing content, social media, or Pitch the Globe, or Today's Show, for example. What does that professorial Rich look like internally at the Guild?
Yeah, certainly internally here, it's important to certainly not take anything for granted. And as I mentioned earlier, really build the connections across our organization. That's both with our staff, because they're on the front lines of doing the work. It's making good connections with our students and residents, making really important connections with our parents and families, making great connections with our vendors and donors. And then really, once we are telling those different stories, making sure that they're aware of it, because they're very proud to see that work. And so we also just can't take for granted, just because we put something out, that obviously people are just going to see it. We have to work really hard to make sure that we're putting it out on all of our platforms, we're sending reminders, we're sharing it internally, so that our world can amplify those great stories. So, it's one thing to have a great story. It's another thing to work at that extra level to make sure that people see it and are really proud of it.
Got that right, man. That's the if a tree falls in the woods kind of thing, right? I mean, you can have the best story in the world, and if nobody reads it, sees it, talks about it, it just goes by the wayside. It just reminds you of the importance of integration with storytelling, because create once, use many. Whether it be an article in the paper or online outlet that you then throw into your marketing channels and echo through the augmented video segment. I do love the thought of capturing content in those experiences at events, so you can then use it as B-roll and marketing and treating yourself like you were the Boston Globe. So I think in roles like yours, it's a stark reminder that you are the creative lead, you are the public relations person, you're the public affairs person, lead designer, copywriter. You are, be all end all of all things. I'm sure there's other, folks within your team that help you kind of move the mechanics around and move the mission forward. But it's great stuff. One of the last questions I got for you is, outside of all this and saving the world and telling good stories of the people that are leveraging the services of the Guild, and outside of that, what's the the fun question here is, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, somewhat connected to the teaching I do at BU. Outside of that, I coach and mentor a lot of the college students that I work with in my class, particularly on their career journey. And I've learned, being in college, also having a son in college, just how much support students need in kind of navigating this confusing world of internships and jobs and trying to decide their path. So I enjoy kind of informally being a career coach with college students, and it's probably something that if I had more time and capacity, I would pursue, because I love being able to support them along their way, help them kind of discover who they are, open up the world of possibilities for them, and dispel some of the myths and concerns that they have about, their choices that they're making in terms of classes or courses or internships and jobs that they're applying for.
That's great. That's invaluable stuff that you're adding to their experience on the side in the classroom, and clearly it just shows you the importance of relationships and staying connected. And I think you and I forget how long you and I have known each other. We worked kind of briefly years ago at a previous firm of mine, but staying connected, and you've leveraged me at times, I've leveraged you, and I think that connective tissue, especially in folks that are in marketing communications, it's really a core of what we do as professionals, right? It's just we meet people, we network, we connect folks, and there may be a time where, you're not hiring me, or I'm not hiring you, but I'm introducing you to people that can help. Or those students in your class will say, I'll never forget the professor I had for this class at BU who reminded me of these 3 typical things. And I think that feels very right for a side hustle, or when you retire and you're off doing your next thing. I could totally see you as some sort of executive coach, or, a mid-career coach working with the young minds of tomorrow who will be doing this podcast when you and I are playing golf and retired down the line. So good stuff. Where can people learn more about you and the Guild?
Yeah, so our website is guildhumanservices.org, and you can learn all about the work we do there.
That's fantastic. So, Rich, I want to thank you for your time here at the PR Bunker Podcast. The podcast can be found on any streaming services that you subscribe to. Be sure to promote this on social media as well. So, Rich, I appreciate your time today. Appreciate the insights. Looking forward to seeing what's next for you in the Guild. Looking forward to reading some great stories and seeing your stuff through the media. But keep on plugging there, and again, keep up the good work. And thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much, Don, for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining the PR Bunker Podcast. This is Don Martelli, CEO of the PR Bunker, strategic communications and public relations agency located here in Boston, helping, amongst others, nonprofits with their storytelling. And I appreciate Rich and the time today he spent with us from the Guild of Human Services. Great stuff, and see you in the next episode.